One of the most commonly asked questions I've seen over the years of playing this game is, should I bother playing the League if I'm starting it late? And the answer is always yes. Hi, it's Lerald, and I'm going to talk about how to have a good time with Necropolis League, even if you are starting a couple of months late. But first, don't forget to like and subscribe. Alright, so let's just start with kind of the why. This is going to be a long league. GGG announced a couple of days ago, maybe close to a week ago now, that they are planning to not put the next league out until late July. Now, they didn't explicitly say it's thanks to Elden Ring's DLC, but it is thanks to Elden Ring's DLC and thanks to GGG for giving us about a month to play around with that before the new league comes out. I actually do appreciate that. The next league is, it's about 6 weeks away, so there's still plenty of time to play around with builds and farm strategies, and since the end game was totally redesigned in patch 3.24, there's still a lot of interactions to learn about, even if you are a Path of Exile veteran. And if you are a new player, then there's really never a better time to learn about the game than when the stakes are kind of low, late into a league, especially one that's running kind of long, rather than starting out during the high-pressure excitement of a league start. The endgame was redesigned in this patch, so it is basically a whole new game once you get through the campaign. Sextants are gone, scarabs were heavily redesigned, and the way you stack endgame content now is very different. You basically want to focus on one mechanic instead of kind of doing a big wide spread. All in on Expedition, all in on Harbinger, whatever. It's also a fairly cheap league. This has been a real change of pace after Affliction League, aka Inflation League. It's very cheap now. Mage Blood is like 90 divines, Headhunter is less than 10 divines, and because the league mechanic gives both a decent amount of currency but also allows for amazing crafting, the quality of inexpensive crafted gear has never been higher. You can consistently craft 6 T1 mod items. I did that with spine bows in like week 2 of the league and sold a bunch of slightly below mirror tier bows for like 10 divines. I also made a bunch of triple fractured claws for various builds, thinking about using one for a lightning strike champion if I get around to playing one this league. But I made all 3 of these triple fractured T1 bases. Like, these are great for a lot of different builds. I'm using one currently for a strength stacking dual strike build, but you could just as easily use this for a lot of builds. And this really didn't take very long to make. Couple hours, couple divines, very low floor on making really good gear. I think the main reason people dislike the league mechanic is that you can't turn it off once you are done with crafting, and it will fill your stash tabs up with corpses, mini corpses, so many corpses. It's just an excessive number. More corpses than you could possibly even imagine. And, that's kind of annoying. I think those are both legitimate complaints. It's not a perfect league, not by any stretch, but it is an amazing league for a new or a late returning player to jump into now because the average quality of gear is very high and prices are very low. All right, now kind of just a brief version of what is maybe the most popular topic in discussing new leagues, or just PoE in general. What build? Any good league starter build will work for starting a league late, so all the info that people put out about good league starters for Necropolis should still be valid as far as recommendations go. One thing you can do is go to PoE Ninja if you're maybe a little more experienced player. You can go to PoE Ninja, look at the builds tab, and then just take the time machine back to like day 3 of that league and see what were the most popular builds, what were the most popular skills, most popular ascendancies, and so on. Now, just by doing that, it's pretty easy to see that Lightning Arrow and Detonate Dead, especially if we look at both Detonate Dead with the transfigured version and regular Detonate Dead, technically speaking, Detonate Dead as Necromancer was probably the most popular league starter this league. You can also do Detonate Dead as an Elementalist, that's fine, whatever. But Detonate Dead and Lightning Arrow were the 2 most popular league starters. I am kind of biased. I definitely prefer Toxic Rain Pathfinder, and we do have a whole playlist of Toxic Rain Pathfinder league start and progression videos that are aimed at newer and returning players, so that is what I would play and recommend personally, but Detonate Dead or Lightning Arrow are also very good and clearly like the 2 most popular builds in the start of this league, and they'll serve you very well if you're getting a late league start. It's up to you. You can play anything you want. There are tons of great options, but those would be my 3 normal recommendations, I think. Toxic Rain, Detonate Dead, or Lightning Arrow. Very normal. Kind of like asking for a soda recommendation and being told Coke, Dr. Pepper, or Pepsi. All good options. All right, now let's move on to what changed with the League. And the main thing is the end game. The Atlas passive tree got a significant rework. Now it always gets a little tweaks here and there, maybe some big reworks. This was a big rework, League, real big. They also gave you multiple trees available, which is really, really nice. Just such huge quality of life. You could set up one essence farming strategy and then have a different farming strategy and then have a totally different third farming strategy for map sustain or whatever. Very good. They also have just by and large made it so that all of the small passives that increase your chance of getting League mechanics now kind of come together so that you can just guarantee that a League mechanic will be on the map like every single time. This is great if you're poor, like someone who's starting a League late or just playing at League start. It's also great for solo self-found players. The ability to guarantee League mechanics are always in every single map. I love that. They also redesigned scarabs. Sextants were removed. My husband is dead. I don't want sextants. I only want scarabs. And they have also made it so that scarabs drop like crazy. As you can see, I have hundreds and hundreds of different types of scarabs. I mean, you know, there are thousands of scarabs in this scarab tab now. The expectation is because the scarab drop rate has been increased so much, you can pull, I mean, sometimes you might pull 10, 20 scarabs out of a single map. The expectation is that you will use them while progressing through your Atlas, like right from the start. And I think a really nice thing about this redesign to scarabs is if I can pull out a Harbinger scarab and a Strongbox scarab just to kind of show off. In the past, this was the old gilded version of an ambush scarab. It was fairly expensive, 10, 12, 15, 20 chaos each. These are so plentiful that even though this is clearly very strong, 5 additional strong boxes for a single scarab, this is a 1 chaos scarab. This is 3 additional harbingers. Again, valuable scarab in the past, 1 chaos. The floor has been moved up significantly in terms of the value of most scarabs. Additionally, you can see the limit here of 4 means that you can, just as a very basic strategy, just shove 4 of these scarabs into the map device, or 3 if you're still working with a 3 slot map device. You can shove 3 of these in and your map, and then there you go. Now you have 9 extra harbingers. They won't necessarily be juiced by, you know, and it might be more valuable to juice them with all of the other different types of scarabs. In fact, it is. But just at the very basic, you could just throw 20 strong boxes into a map, and, you know, that certainly works as a strategy you can just get up and running and get going with while still progressing through the Atlas. Then there's Back to Basics. Back to Basics is this new modifier, this new keystone modifier right in the middle of the Atlas passive tree that kind of created a whole new farming paradigm. As you can see, it makes it so that your maps have anywhere between 0 and 80% more explicit modifier effect. That is these mods, you know, the 60% reduced effect of non-curse auras from skills, 20% chance to ignite, freeze, and shock on hit, those. That is increased by up to 80% more. That's also affected by all of the sources of increased explicit mod effect on your maps from various other passives, of which there are a lot. And so you can get well over 100%, well over 200% map mod effect, actually, if Back to Basics rolls really well. And then it comes with the downside of not being able to have extra content, not being able to apply influence to your maps. So no Maven, no Exarch, no Eater, and also no League mechanics at all. And so what you do with Back to Basics as a farming strategy is you basically use it to farm maps in your maps, like to farm maps using cartography scarabs. That's been the main use for it, is using like cartography scarabs and then farming up 10 to, you know, farming up 8 mod corrupted maps. You can farm up 10 or more of those in a single map, and that has been probably my favorite farming strategy of the League, if I had to really pinpoint one that I loved. You also can farm tons and tons of scarabs that way, and all you're really doing is just kind of clearing through regular maps full of regular dudes with map mods that are now juiced to an absolutely absurd degree. Like that 44% monster attack speed might be 120% monster attack speed if the rolls are good. It means that the monster pack size might be over 130% in a good map. Like, quantity might be over 300%. You know, it's all very interesting. And then there's no like league mechanics in there, but it is very fun and kind of juicy and a little scary as well. In addition to this, GGG also added tier 17 maps, a new category of map entirely. Tier 17 maps are the new mechanic for unlocking 5-slot map devices. You do have to complete one in order to get a 5-slot map device, and I think that kind of makes more sense than having to do a Legion 4-way. Now, they are supposed to be a stepping stone mechanic between doing regular tier 16s and completing Uber bosses. You need 5 Uber boss fragments from tier 17 maps to run an Uber boss, so there is some grinding of tier 17s required to do Uber bosses. There's just one problem. Tier 17 maps wound up being way harder than Uber bosses on average. Let's see if I can find one with an absolutely insane set of mods. Here we go. The Maven just follows you around and heals everything and debuffs you. So let's see if I can find some more here, some really awful ones. Here we go. Monsters reflecting 20% of Fizz and Ellie damage, monsters impaling on hit and reflecting that, like consuming that on every 5th impale. The area being filled with Awakener's Desolation from the Cirrus fight. Just so many awful evil modifiers. There we go. 4th one down on this one. Players have 4% reduced action speed for each time they've used a skill recently. Let me show off this build at attacking at max speed. You know, that's a lot of attacks. That's a lot of reduced action speed. So a lot of just build annihilating mods on the tier 17 maps that made them essentially harder than Uber bosses on average. And that's really not an exaggeration. They did get some nerfs early on in the league, but they're still very overtuned even still. They can be super rewarding, as you can see from some of the mods here. You can see up at the top where it says like quality, you can see 113% more scarabs. See if we can find one with 70% more currency, 100% more maps. Like, there's definitely some value in doing tier 17s. It's something for very juiced characters to aspire to and do, but it is oppressively difficult. Now, tier 17 maps have this very, very good design to them. One thing that I will praise them for is that they cannot drop inside of other tier 17 maps. So farming them up in tier 16 maps and selling them in bulk to other players is a great currency making strategy, and it does create a mandatory membrane of you either have to alternate between the two if you're going to farm for yourself, or you have to trade with other players if you exclusively want to focus on one thing. I think that's great. I think that was a really smart design on GGG's part. And it does mean that even if you're not up to the level, your character is online for in-game content, but not up to the level of running these oppressively difficult tier 17s, you can still make a lot of currency by farming up tier 16 or farming tier 16s to get tier 17s and trade them to other players. Now, the way that you get tier 17 maps to actually drop is through your void stones from progressing through the Atlas and completing the non-Uber pinnacle bosses, the Exarch and Eater, and the Maven and Uber Elder. Those 4 bosses are what give you your 4 void stones, and you can see from that second line, tier 16 maps dropped in areas have a 0.4% chance to become a tier 17 map for each socketed void stone, so the chance becomes significantly higher based on, you know, whether you have 2 or 4 void stones. It becomes dramatically higher when you have 4. It goes from what is that, 1.6% with only 2 to 6.4% with all 4. And then also there's that parenthetical line at the bottom. Each tier 17 map dropped in areas lowers the chance for subsequent tier 17 maps to drop. Nobody knows exactly for sure how hard the diminishing returns on that are. They seem to be fairly high, but not like massive. I've definitely had maps where I had multiple tier 17 drops in a single map, but generally speaking, you know, it's about 1 out of every 20 maps or so is a tier 17 instead of a tier 16. That's about the right number. All right, so now let's shift over to kind of the most important part of this video. What should you do to make currency? So I have picked some of my favorite currency farming strategies at kind of 3 different levels of play, mainly emphasizing early on in the end game, since, you know, that's kind of who this is aimed at. We have made videos about every single one of the strategies that I'm going to talk about here, so I would encourage you to check those out if you want a more in-depth breakdown. This is just going to be kind of the quick and dirty list of what I would prioritize if I were starting the league right now. All right, so early on, I think Heist is very good for a bit of early currency when you first start mapping. Now, with that being said, I don't love Heist. It's not something that I would want to do long term, so I wouldn't actually put any points into it. I would just simply you know, as I gather up a couple of contracts here and there, I would grab them all, go to the Rogues Harbor, run some heist contracts, get some currency out of it, and then get back to mapping. That is the approach I would take. So I think the first Atlas passive tree that I would show off here is just how I would progress and how I did progress my Atlas in the start of the league. I came right up through the middle here and I took the Kirac nodes. This node doesn't actually matter, but the right side is where you get your chance to get Kirac missions now. And you want to come up here and take Commissioned Officer and Shaping the World, just those two notables first, and then come over and take Shaping the Mountains and Shaping the Skies to give yourself increased chance of higher tier maps. And then after that, come over and take the Kirac mission chance in these two wheels here. And as you can see, by taking all the possible Kirac mission chance, you get 26% chance to get a Kirac mission on completion. The baseline is already 8, so 34% chance every time you finish a map to get a Kirac mission. That really helps with initial map sustain, also just by taking these 3 wheels. And then after I've gotten all of this stuff, then coming through and taking these points here, you get, what is this? An 85% chance for all of your maps to drop a tier higher. That really helps with map sustain as well. This is if you want to progress through your Atlas as quickly as possible, which is what I want to do at league start. But you know, maybe you want to kind of progress through a bit more slowly, kind of acquire some gear and some currency to make it a little easier for you. And so you wouldn't want to do this, but if you're just trying to kind of move through quickly, this is the move. All right, so my second approach that I would recommend if you're just kind of trying to move through kind of slowly, you know, progress, get gear, make it nice and easy for yourself, is just to come take expedition nodes. Just come right over and take the nodes that give you the chance to get expedition in your maps. Come up and take extreme archaeology. This is really like my personal favorite node of all of expedition. It sets you to only have 1 explosive instead of the chain of explosives that you detonate normally with expedition. So you just do 1 big boom. It blows everything out of the ground all at once, and really makes it a little bit more dangerous, but a lot faster, a lot more fun. And then I would take the rest of the expedition nodes, guarantee myself 92% chance is all you need to guarantee that they're in every map, because you get a baseline 8% chance. That's true for, that's true for all league mechanics. That's true for master missions. 8% is the base chance. So if you add, up to 92%, that should get you 100% of the time. Then out of this, we've got Noble Quest and Scratching Up the Ground. We got Buried Knowledge, give ourselves an increased chance of getting logbooks, a bit more reward out of Expedition. And then if you wanted to take some more nodes to like increase your map drop chance, you could do that. If you wanted to spec into kind of another league mechanic, you could do that as well. One thing I didn't mention is that, and this has been very controversial, Necropolis League is on the Atlas passive tree. I hope that's not something that GGG does again. But you can make your way over here and take Devout Pursuit to make the positive modifiers from Necropolis monsters more rewarding. You can take Imperial Wraiths to give yourself kind of higher chances of getting corpses and all flames from monsters. And then you can take Embers of the All Flame drop chance to also do the same thing with getting more all flames. So this is kind of the approach I would take. I do think Expedition is the best starting league mechanic. You get gear crafting from Rog, you get a bit of gambling from Gwenin, not that that really matters, and mainly you're able to just go talk to Tujin and just say like, hey buddy, give me money. In fact, let's do that right now. Hey Tujin, give me some money. Boom. I just got 2 chaos. Like, I love Tujin. He just gives you money. It's pretty great, and it's a pretty great league mechanic that is valuable from tier 1 maps all the way up through tier 16s. An alternative if you wanted something that you can do at any level, and you can do this at high levels too, but you can do it at any level. You can do it at tier 1s all the way up through tier 17s if you want, is Alva. You can do Alva's incursions, and this is something you can do at the same time as Expedition. You can set up on an Expedition style map and your Atlas passive tree, and then kind of just make your way over and take all the Alva nodes as well. Now, you don't need Vol Oligarchs. The Vol Flesh Merchants are just basically a bonus little guy in each incursion who you can kill, who will sometimes throw a little bit of currency, so it can be okay, but he's not super rewarding. And the same goes with the Cursed Treasures. They're little treasure chests hidden in the incursions that you can click. You sacrifice like 8 seconds of time, but if you have time dilation right here, you're going to have minutes of time to complete each incursion, so it's not hugely valuable. But the cursed treasures, sometimes they'll throw a little bit of currency. I never really found them or the Vol flesh merchants to be all that valuable on their own, but you know, they're only 1 extra point. So you could take it and maybe you'll get a couple chaos or a divine orb or something out of the deal. Now we have all the stuff we need really to make Alva work here. We have resource reallocation, contested development, time dilation, and artifacts of the Vol, guaranteeing that we're able to make a full Temple of Atzwaddle every 3 maps. And the thing about Alva temples is, for the most part, they're really not worth much. What you're really looking for is you're looking to make locuses of corruption that are connected to the rest of the temple. Like, just to give the very short version of the Alva guide I made right around the league start for Necropolis League, which you should check out if you're going to do that, you know, get a little bit more like data on how to do that effectively. But these loci of corruption, they sell for over a divine, and you can pretty consistently make these. Well, anyway, let's see. Locus of corruption. Here we go. It is an open room, so it's connected. And 200 chaos is the very cheapest one, but 1.5 divines or more than that, closer to 2 divines. Very, very easy to make these. Literally something you can do in tier 1 white maps, you know, tier 1 maps that you didn't even hit with like a transmute orb. You can make Alva incursions, and you can make several of these per hour very easily, even on a very bare bones character. And also you don't need any scarabs or anything like that at all to make these either. They're just in the maps, you run in and do them, and you're good. All right, now I have one sort of mid-game strategy that I would recommend, and that is essences and bestiary. Now, you can do either of these if you prefer one and dislike the other. You can do both of them together. I do think they make sense together. They, like Alva, can be done without like rolling any, so, you know, you don't have to alch the maps. You can do it on white maps if you want, just to make it nice and easy and fast. Beasts don't really care what quality of map they're on. They only care about the tier, and the same is true for essences. Now, because of amplified energies here, you can see essences in white maps have a max tier of screaming, and in yellow or red maps, they have a max tier of shrieking. This does increase their tier. You know, this makes it so that essence monsters will drop 1 essence with the highest possible tier. Now, because of this scarab here, Essence Scarab of Ascent, here it is, essences will be found a tier higher. This means you can guarantee that every single essence in every map, as long as they're tier 6 or higher, as long as they're yellow or higher, will be a deafening essence or better. Deafening essences at the like bare minimum are worth a couple of chaos, like 2, but they can be worth quite a bit more in bulk. So this is a farm strategy that can be worth quite a lot of currency. You know, I've made 20 divines an hour running this type of strategy very fast, but even as something that you run maybe a little slower, but still fairly efficiently, you can make quite a few divines per hour for very low investment, very, very cheaply and easily. Bestiary, you're looking for one thing exclusively. You can open up the challenges page and just open up your Bestiary tab here. You're looking for Krykic Chimerals, and I think I might have actually bottled all of these up and sold them. I did. All right, well, Krykic Chimerals, you talk with Einhar and buy orbs from him when you're at the Bestiary. These little things, the Bestiary orbs, and you can sell Krykic Chimerals. If we pull up on PoE Ninja here, Krykic Chimeral. These are worth about 1.5 divines each. Now, you can go 10 maps in a row without seeing a Krykic Chimeral. It does happen. But, you know, you can also run into multiple of these in a single map. And it's pretty easy to farm up a lot of beasts. I do think, you know, doing bestiary and essence together is kind of a good way to run a couple of very, very cheap strategies at the same time and make yourself a fair amount of currency. This is something I would do, like I said, after getting 2 Void Stones. I think is really the time that I would do this kind of a strategy. Just run it very simple, very cheap. Do it on like tier 6 maps. Probably do it on tier 6 maps that are white. You can do Bestiary and Alva at the same time if you want, or Essence and Alva. That can also work. But it's just a very simple strategy that you run that's kind of in the same half of the tree. Doesn't require a ton of points. And then finally, I think for end game, I really like strong boxes. I kind of have 2 strategies I want to show off here. This is probably my second favorite strategy, my favorite one that involves a league mechanic. doing ambush, you can go super basic, just take all of these strongbox scarab, like you can literally just do this. You can just do strongbox scarabs, go. Just take everything else out and just strongbox scarabs, engage, and just run strongbox scarabs in a map and just do strongboxes. That is a strategy that can work. Or you can really push it to the like expensive end, and you can use ambush scarabs of containment, turn all of the monsters that are in the map into strong boxes, and then take all of the modifiers like the scarabs like ambush scarab of potency that makes the modifiers on strong boxes higher, so they'll drop more stuff. Ambush scarab of hidden compartment, so you have a higher chance of being able to reopen the strong boxes. Ambush scarab of discernment, so the scarabs or the strong boxes are more valuable. You know, they're more diviners strong boxes, throwing more div cards at you, more currency strong boxes. Definitely a lot of freedom to play around with strong boxes, and I think the reason I like it so much is it's very simple. You walk up, you click the box, a bunch of monsters jump out, you kill them, and then you get some stuff. Very basic, and again, something that can be very, very profitable, and you can range it anywhere from super cheap to super expensive, and the reward will kind of adjust based on how much you're investing in it. And then for my favorite strategy of the league, it is back to basics tier 17 map farming. I have done it both in both versions of tier 17 map farming. Actually running tier 17s, yeah, that could be kind of risky and tough, you know, but also actually just farming up more tier 17 maps to either run or sell by doing tier 16 maps with back to basics setup. This is a strategy that I've really enjoyed, and as you can see, we're not taking any league mechanics, obviously. What we're doing here is we're just doing everything we can to make sure we get as many maps to drop as possible. We are also doing everything we can to make sure we get as many scarabs to drop as possible. We're taking all of the scarab wheels. We're also even blocking some league mechanics so that the league mechanic associated with those scarabs, or I should say the other way around, the scarabs associated with that league mechanic won't drop. Ritual scarabs aren't worth much. Delirium scarabs aren't worth much. Abyss ones aren't worth much, that kind of thing. So we're blocking all of those. And then we're just juicing map mod effects as hard as we can. There are no league mechanics in here, but we are fighting with monsters that, you know, are very, very strong, but they throw a lot of maps at us. And I really like that. Super simple. You just run in, clear through the whole map in 2 minutes, grab all the maps that drop, all the currency and scarabs that drop, and there you go. Really fun strategy and something I've really been enjoying doing. Definitely a gameplay loop that really, really, really speaks to me and has kept me engaged for this whole league, I have to say. All right, I think that is a good starting point for getting up and running late into the league. There are definitely more approaches than just the ones I mentioned here, and I think that's what's so great about Path of Exile. It is a game that poses a player with a lot of problems, and then it gives you a multitude of competitive solutions for those problems, and it's up for you to kind of figure out which ones you prefer, which ones you dislike, and go from there. I prefer these ones because I think they are the simplest approaches to get going. All right, I think that pretty much covers it. Thanks for watching. Bye.